There was once a time that a new BioWare game was cause to celebrate. Sadly, that hasn't been the case for a couple of years, especially since the mess that was Mass Effect Andromeda. And wouldn't you know it, history seems to have repeated itself with Anthem, only on a much greater scale. So what went wrong with Anthem? There's a recurring motif as to why Anthem hasn't really connected with gamers, which is that it contains basically zero of the things that folks love about BioWare's games. For instance, in its very first presentation, which took place during E3 2017, gameplay footage showed a whole lot of baddies getting blown to bits, but no story. What we got instead was some nifty-looking flight mechanics, a pinch of cringy, stilted scripted team chatter, and a couple of nondescript guns, enemies, and environments.
Have you been in there yet?
I haven't. We should do that later with Kim.
Yeah, you could use the XP.
Mind you, this was shown during the same presentation as the first fantastic Metro Exodus trailer and the reveal of Assassin's Creed Origins, so there was definitely competition. The Anthem team totally had their work cut out for them to make their game stand out. Spoiler alert, they did not.
Oh, come on. Be something good. Oh, yes! Jar's Wrath.
Oh, nice.
Thanks, BioWare. We hate it. Let's face it, BioWare is surprisingly good at crafting believable romances, and we eat it up like Valentine's Day chocolates. It's just kinda what happens when you're good at making likable characters. Players grow attached to them. So if there's more than one awesome character in the same story in any medium, someone's hard at work inventing ways for them to hook up, and bless them for it.
I thought maybe you could use some company tonight.
Will you stay here with me? Until the call comes?
For as long as you want.
Naturally, that was one of the first things BioWare shot down when discussing Anthem. Certainly, romance isn't the only way to get players invested in your universe, but considering how little the finished game really cares about relationships that aren't between you and the three other people screaming in your ear while you play, it's a hook the game could have used, and one that could have at least kept a good portion of BioWare's biggest fans happier than they ended up being. By all accounts, development on Anthem started in 2012, not long after Mass Effect 3. It's unclear whether the game in its current form is what BioWare had in mind to begin with, but what is abundantly clear is that Bungie beat them to the punch by announcing Destiny in 2013. Now, because of the way game development works, there's going to be aspects of your project that you can't stop once you've already started, but there's plenty of leeway for some things to change midstream, right? So EA and BioWare must have seen some of the messes Bungie had on their hands with some of Destiny's most critiqued issues between 2014 and now. Did they have enough self-awareness to try and avoid them with Anthem? Nope. On multiple fronts, from the narrative bottleneck of the game's later portions, to the obtuse lore stuffed to an in-game encyclopedia, to the bullet-spongy nature of the tougher enemies, Anthem is repeating tons of Bungie's mistakes. The game does very little to stop inviting constant comparisons, and aside from the nice perk of having a protagonist who actually talks, there's not much Anthem does that improves on the formula that Destiny established so many moons ago.
That sounds like it hurt.
Sorry.
Regardless of how one might feel about the loot shooter craze, one of its small blessings is the idea that single players aren't beholden to a team to experience the game. You might have a harder time of it in Destiny, but you can pretty much solo everything in that game except strikes and raids. Anthem is in a much weirder situation though. Naturally, being a live service, there's a push to get people to team up on every mission to share the load. Ironically, teaming up in Anthem often turns into the worst possible way to experience it. Many of the game's flashier attacks fill the screen with so much particle effect clutter that it's hard to actually know what it is you're trying to fight, and that's on top of so much of the mid-mission narrative being interrupted by teammates. So many players have found that the best way to fly is solo. It's what BioWare's good at, and it shows, which also ironically exposes just how uninspiring the enemies, gameplay, and set pieces are. There just isn't an easy way to have fun in Anthem. Despite some warning signs at the outset, there were still plenty of players who were interested in Anthem in the weeks before its release, including those who pre-ordered it. Hype can be a powerful thing, and legitimate excitement can surely paper over a game's flaws for some folks. One of the key components of that hype, however, is knowing exactly what day that hype can pay off. And EA couldn't even get that right.
What a surprise.
EA's way of getting loyal fans ready for Anthem was releasing a painful-to-look-at chart detailing the game's staggering release. What that meant was that gamers who pre-ordered Anthem or had EA access on PC or Xbox One had around a week's head start, one that PlayStation users couldn't access whatsoever. That's bad enough. The punchline to this, however, is that those players who got to experience the game before the actual release date of February 22nd experienced the game in its worst possible form, riddled with bugs and balancing issues, only some of which would be ironed out by, you guessed it, a day one patch. The damage had already been done though. A lot of players' perceptions of the game were shaped by that mediocre week in the hands of the hyped. So yes, Anthem might have screwed the proverbial pooch a number of ways. That said, it just needed one above and beyond factor to differentiate itself from its shooter brethren, and it might have garnered some defenders. Even the much maligned Mass Effect Andromeda managed to earn some praise for its combat, its ideas, and a unique exploration loop. Anthem, on the other hand, has taken all of BioWare's innovation and sanded it down into dust. Reviews from both gamers and critics reflect this. The closest the game comes to a universally praised feature is its flight. Even then, the overheat mechanic means that you spend most of the game only able to spend a few seconds in the air before having to recharge. All the things that make BioWare games interesting are nowhere to be found, and while EA may have grand plans for Anthem's future, it's hard to imagine that many gamers, fans, and casual players alike will stick around that long. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more SVG videos about your favorite video games are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.